Hey guys, tonight we step softly into the early morning light of ancient Galilee, a land where dust settles like a gentle blanket over rolling hills and sleepy villages. You find yourself standing on a rough path just as dawn stretches its pale fingers across the sky, the scent of dry earth mingling with the faint, sweet aroma of wild thyme and fig trees. The sun is still low, painting the horizon in soft golds and pinks, and the air holds the coolness that will soon give way to the warmth of the day. You trudge behind Jesus and his small group of followers as they begin their slow, dusty journey. The clatter of sandals on stone and the occasional creak of a wooden staff are the only sounds breaking the peaceful morning hush. The village is just waking, women hanging laundry, men lighting fires, children rubbing sleep from their eyes. The world feels calm here, but you might want to keep your eyes peeled. Traveling in this time wasn't exactly a stroll in the park. You probably wouldn't survive a day without the right blend of patience and stubbornness. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always nice to know who's joining this slow, winding journey with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As you follow Jesus through the narrow, winding streets, you notice the dusty haze catching the early sun's rays, lending everything a golden shimmer. Galilee, nestled in the northern hills, was a place where life moved slowly, and days were marked more by the rhythm of the sun than by clocks or schedules. You can almost hear the faint bleating of sheep and the murmur of early morning chatter drifting from courtyards nearby. Historically, this region was a mosaic of cultures and influences, Roman roads intersecting with Jewish traditions and the lingering whispers of Greek philosophy. Jesus himself grew up in this environment, a carpenter's son who knew the feel of wood grain beneath his fingers and the weight of everyday concerns. It's easy to romanticize such times, but the reality was often harsh: dusty roads, unpredictable weather, and the ever-present risk of bandits on the road. Here's a quirky tidbit: people back then often used a mixture of crushed crocodile dung and mud as sunscreen, a stinky, unpleasant, yet surprisingly effective protection against the fierce Middle Eastern sun. Historians still argue whether this was common in Galilee or more typical along the Nile, but either way, it's a reminder of the odd solutions people came up with before SPF creams. As you trudge along beside Jesus, you notice how he moves with a calm confidence, unfazed by the slow start to the day. You might think that following a man who would later become so famous would mean bustling crowds and constant excitement, but this morning is quiet, unassuming, perfect for slowly drifting toward sleep. Remember, this journey is less about grand miracles and more about the subtle textures of everyday life, the small moments that build a story. You step over a stray goat and pass a group of women gossiping softly by a well. The sounds of the village morning envelop you: chirping birds, the occasional clink of pottery, a distant bell signaling the start of market day. Each detail, from the rough stone underfoot to the faint scent of olive oil in the air, paints a vivid picture that invites you to settle in and relax, and with that, you keep walking, letting the slow rhythm of the day soothe your thoughts as the sun climbs higher and the dust rises gently behind you. You find yourself settling into the gentle warmth of a mid-morning in Galilee, where the sun now bathes the dusty streets in a soft amber light. Ahead, Jesus and his closest companions pause beneath a spreading fig tree for breakfast, a simple, quiet moment before the day's slow unfolding. You linger nearby, drawn by the smells and sounds of a modest meal shared in good company. The air hums faintly with the murmurs of conversation as Jesus breaks bread with the disciples. The meal is humble: coarse flatbreads, ripe olives, and a small bowl of bitter herbs. You notice the rough texture of the bread, still warm from a nearby oven, and the faint tang of fermented grape juice that substitutes for wine in this early hour. This is not a feast, but a gathering that feels timeless in its simplicity. Historically, meals like this were more than just food, they were moments to build trust and community. Eating together was a ritual of connection, especially in a culture where hospitality meant everything. Jesus, a carpenter by trade, would have been well acquainted with such moments: meals taken between labor, often eaten outdoors, surrounded by the sounds of nature and village life. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Ancient Jewish households sometimes used a wooden spoon called a mappa, that was also a musical instrument when tapped, a little percussion to keep spirits light during meals. Imagine the disciples gently tapping their spoons in rhythm while sharing stories and laughs under the fig tree's shade. Historians still argue whether Jesus' meals were more communal celebrations or quiet moments of reflection, but either way, the scene invites a sense of calm togetherness. As you watch, you catch a glimpse of Mary Magdalene arranging some herbs nearby, her fingers deft despite the dust and heat. The small arguments and friendly jabs between the disciples feel almost like a family's casual banter. You might hear Peter grumble about the lack of fish, or Judas eyeing the last olive with a conspiratorial grin. These small, human moments remind you that the great figure you follow was also part of everyday life. The scent of crushed thyme and wild garlic drifts in the warm breeze, mingling with the dusty earth and the faint smoke from a nearby cooking fire. Birds flit overhead, their soft chirps punctuating the quiet chatter. It's easy to imagine yourself settling deeper into this moment, letting the mundane and the sacred mingle gently in the warmth. This scene is a quiet reminder that before any of the famous sermons or miracles, life was made up of these small, shared meals, grounding, comforting, and full of the subtle textures of ancient life. You can almost feel the bread's rough edges on your fingertips and the sun's gentle heat warming your shoulders as you lean back against the fig tree's trunk, and with that, you prepare to rise alongside Jesus and his companions, ready to continue the slow, dusty journey that will carry you through history's whispering pages. The sun climbs higher as you follow Jesus and his group weaving through the narrow, bustling streets of Capernaum. You feel the crunch of gravel beneath your sandals and hear the lively hum of daily market chatter, vendors calling out prices, children darting between stalls, the distant bleat of goats. This is the heart of Galilean life, a mosaic of scents, colors, and sounds that feel both familiar and distant. You trail behind Jesus as he moves with a quiet purpose, his robe brushing against the dusty walls. The air carries the faint aroma of fresh figs and dried fish, mingling with the more pungent notes of leather and spices. Around you, townsfolk are engaged in their routines, women pounding grain, men mending fishing nets, and a scribe carefully inscribing words on a scroll. Historically, Capernaum was more than just a village, it was a thriving fishing hub on the Sea of Galilee. Archaeological digs reveal stone houses with courtyards, water cisterns, and the remains of what might have been a synagogue. This synagogue is where Jesus is said to have taught, its stones quietly witnessing many whispered prayers and public teachings alike. Here's a curious detail. Some scholars speculate that people in Jesus' time may have used scented oils, not only for fragrance but also as a mild antiseptic, a practical choice in a dusty environment. Imagine Jesus rubbing a bit of olive oil onto his hands before greeting people or washing after handling fish and nets. Historians still argue whether this was common practice or reserved for the wealthier, but it adds a sensory layer to the dusty streets you walk. As you follow, you catch snippets of conversations, debates about the Roman occupation, murmurs about recent healings, and the latest news from Jerusalem. Jesus listens more than he speaks, his calm presence grounding the energy around him. You spot a small boy nervously clutching a woven basket, offering him a reassuring smile as he scurries past. The market's lively bustle contrasts with the quiet resolve in Jesus' eyes. You might notice his sandals coated with a fine layer of dust, the slight wear at the soles telling stories of many long walks. You imagine the rough texture of his tunic against his skin and the warmth of the sun pressing down on the stone and earth. This everyday scene, with all its movement and noise, is a vital backdrop to the slow, deliberate rhythm of Jesus' life. The ordinary moments, waiting in line for water, exchanging greetings, pausing to hear a street musician's tune, paint a picture that feels deeply human and quietly profound. As the afternoon sun begins to soften, you and Jesus approach a modest stone building where some disciples gather. The air cools slightly, shadows lengthen, and the journey continues, step by dusty step. The sun dips lower as you trudge alongside Jesus and his disciples toward the rolling hills surrounding the Sea of Galilee. The air grows cooler, carrying the faint scent of wild thyme and dry earth. You feel the crunch of small stones beneath your feet and hear the distant bleating of sheep settling in for the evening. This quiet landscape stretches out before you, a patchwork of olive groves, vineyards, and dusty paths that seem to wind endlessly. You watch Jesus pause beneath an ancient olive tree, its gnarled branches casting long shadows. Here, in this peaceful solitude, he often retreats from the clamor of towns and markets to pray and reflect. The rough bark brushes softly against your fingertips as you reach out, grounding yourself in the same timeless place. Historically, the Mount of Olives was not only a scenic overlook but a place rich with spiritual significance, linked to prophecies and ancient traditions. Pilgrims would travel here to seek quiet and connection, and it's believed that Jesus spent many contemplative hours in these groves, preparing for the days ahead. A quirky fact for you: the olives harvested in this region were prized for their oil, which was used for everything from cooking to lighting lamps and even as a skin moisturizer. Some ancient texts mention that olive oil was considered liquid gold, a precious resource carefully pressed and stored in clay jars. You might imagine Jesus' hands stained faintly green from harvesting olives, or the soft glow of oil lamps flickering in the nearby homes as night approaches. Historians still argue whether the specific trees standing here now date back to Jesus' time, but the landscape itself remains a silent witness to countless quiet moments. The gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of a night bird create a calming backdrop as you and Jesus settle beneath the trees. You notice how the breeze carries a mixture of scents: earthy moss, crushed leaves, and the faint saltiness from the nearby lake. The sky fades from pale blue to soft shades of pink and lavender, inviting a gentle lull in the day's pace. The disciples settle in a loose circle, some leaning against stones, others tracing patterns in the dust. As you breathe in the cooling air and watch the first stars begin to twinkle faintly overhead, you sense the slow, deliberate rhythm of this moment, the quiet before the days that will change everything. The peacefulness here invites you to rest, to let the slow, dusty journey seep into your bones, and to prepare for what lies ahead. The morning sun rises softly over the sleepy village as you join Jesus walking through the narrow dirt paths of Nazareth. The air is crisp with the scent of freshly baked bread and the faint aroma of herbs drying on wooden racks outside simple homes. You hear the distant chatter of neighbors greeting each other and the rhythmic tapping of a carpenter's hammer echoing from a nearby workshop. Nazareth, a small and humble town, is where Jesus spent much of his youth. You feel the rough texture of the stone walls as you pass, and notice the modest gardens where families grow lentils, chickpeas, and fragrant herbs. Life here is slow and steady, much like the rhythm you're settling into alongside Jesus. A historical tidbit: Nazareth wasn't a major city but rather a quiet village often overlooked in ancient texts. Its obscurity is such that some historians still debate whether it was even significant enough to be mentioned in certain records from the era. Yet, for Jesus, this dusty place was home, a grounding point before his journeys began. You might find it amusing that, despite its modest size, Nazareth was a melting pot of cultures. Roman soldiers occasionally passed through, and traders brought stories and goods from far-off lands. Some locals even tried to keep up with the latest fashions by dyeing their wool with natural colors, resulting in surprisingly bright tunics amidst the dusty earth tones. As you walk, Jesus greets familiar faces, his presence calm and unassuming. You notice his hands, sturdy yet gentle, likely shaped by years of carpentry work in his family's workshop. The scent of fresh-cut cedar wood lingers faintly, mingling with the warmth of the morning sun. Historians still argue whether Jesus actually worked extensively as a carpenter or if the term referred more broadly to a craftsman or builder. This small debate adds a layer of mystery to the otherwise familiar scenes unfolding before you. You pause briefly by a small spring where children splash water, their laughter light and carefree. Watching this simple, peaceful moment, you realize how these quiet early years shaped the man you follow, a man who would soon step into a much larger story. The dusty trail winds through rolling hills as you follow Jesus toward the bustling town of Capernaum. The air hums with activity, the calls of market vendors, the clatter of carts over stone streets, and the mingling scents of fresh fish and baking bread. You feel the uneven cobblestones underfoot, worn smooth by countless footsteps, and catch the occasional burst of laughter from children playing nearby. Capernaum is known as Jesus' home base during his ministry, a lively fishing village on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Its strategic location made it a crossroads for trade and culture, buzzing with the everyday drama of merchants, fishermen, and Roman officials. Here's a quirky tidbit: the town's synagogue, where Jesus often taught, was built using white limestone imported from distant quarries. The stones glistened in the sun, a stark contrast to the more common mud brick homes surrounding it. Archaeologists still debate the exact layout and size of this synagogue, as ruins uncovered hint at multiple construction phases and renovations over decades. You watch Jesus move calmly through the crowd, his words soft yet compelling as he engages listeners. People from all walks of life gather around him, some curious, others skeptical. The merchants barter energetically nearby, their voices rising and falling like a soothing tide. Historians still argue whether Jesus' teachings in Capernaum were spontaneous or carefully planned sermons, adding a layer of intrigue to the stories passed down. Either way, the atmosphere is rich with anticipation and quiet reverence. You notice the salty breeze coming off the lake, mingling with the warm sun on your skin. As the day unfolds, you sense the subtle rhythm of life here: fishermen hauling nets, women drawing water from the well, and children weaving between the stalls. In this moment, the ordinary scenes of daily life intertwine seamlessly with the extraordinary presence of Jesus, inviting you to slow down and absorb the gentle hum of a town on the cusp of history. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows as you follow Jesus along the rugged paths leading to the tranquil shores of the Sea of Galilee. The gentle lap of waves against pebbled beaches mingles with the soft rustling of reeds swaying in the evening breeze. The sky shifts in pastel hues, pink, lavender, and a hint of gold, painting a peaceful backdrop to the slow unfolding of another day. Fishing boats bob lazily in the water, their sails furled for the night. You notice the weathered faces of fishermen mending nets, their hands skilled from years of work, fingers moving deftly despite the fading light. Jesus walks alongside them, a calm presence amid the gentle bustle. A historical fact: fishing was a cornerstone of life around the Sea of Galilee. The area's economy relied heavily on the fish trade, supplying local markets and even distant towns. Fish like tilapia, sometimes called St. Peter's fish today, were caught using nets and simple traps. Interestingly, historians still debate how widespread fish farming was at the time, with some evidence suggesting early forms of aquaculture. You observe the simplicity of the boats, wooden, open, and small enough for just a few men. The quiet splash of oars and occasional shout of a fisherman create a soothing rhythm, perfect for winding down. It's easy to imagine how Jesus found solace here, reflecting quietly after a day spent teaching and healing. Here's a quirky detail: some fishermen wore sandals specially designed to grip slippery rocks and boat decks, made from woven leather strips. Others preferred going barefoot, claiming it helped them feel the boat's movement better. Scholars still wonder how much the choice of footwear affected the success of a fisherman's day. As the stars begin to emerge overhead, Jesus pauses and looks out over the water. The air cools, and a soft hush settles across the shoreline. You feel the quiet weight of the moment, the calm before the unfolding of stories that would ripple through history. Remember that earlier day in Nazareth, with the scent of cedar wood and fresh bread? Here, by the lake, life feels just as grounded, though touched by a hint of the extraordinary. The evening air grows cooler as you trudge behind Jesus toward a small cluster of olive trees dotting the hillside. Their silvery leaves shimmer faintly under the emerging moonlight, and the faint scent of crushed olives mixes with the earthy aroma of dry soil. The quiet rustling of the trees creates a natural lullaby, soft enough to coax even the busiest mind toward calm. This hillside, later known as the Mount of Olives, has been a place of quiet contemplation and prayer for centuries. Here, Jesus often sought refuge from the crowds, slipping away from the noise to find moments of stillness. You imagine the rough fabric of his cloak brushing against the twisted bark as he moves slowly among the trees. A historical fact: olive cultivation was vital in the ancient Holy Land, providing oil used for cooking, lighting, and religious rituals. The Mount of Olives was covered with thousands of these trees, some believed to be hundreds of years old even in Jesus' time. Interestingly, archaeologists debate whether some of the oldest olive trees here could actually date back to that era. Here's a quirky tidbit: olive oil was sometimes mixed with fragrant herbs to create soothing balms, used both for medicinal purposes and as comfort during long journeys. Scholars still argue how widely such remedies were available to common people versus the wealthy. You watch Jesus settle at the base of a sturdy olive tree, the cool stone beneath him grounding him in the moment. His eyes close briefly, as if drawing strength from the earth itself. The world around him softens, the distant sounds of village life fade, replaced by the gentle whisper of leaves and the occasional chirp of a night bird. Historians still argue whether Jesus' moments of solitude here were purely spiritual or also practical, giving him time to plan his next steps carefully. Either way, you sense the weight of these quiet hours, pregnant with thought, prayer, and quiet resolve. As you settle beside him, the peaceful night wraps around you both. The soft hum of the world slowing down invites you to breathe deep and drift toward rest. The next morning breaks softly with a pale golden light spilling over dusty rooftops and winding streets. You find yourself walking through the bustling market of Capernaum, the lively heart of Jesus' public ministry. The air is thick with the scent of fresh figs, baked bread, and the faint, smoky trace of wood fires. You follow Jesus as he moves calmly through the crowd, nodding to merchants and pausing briefly to watch a craftsman shape clay pots. The noise of haggling voices mingles with the occasional bleat of goats tethered nearby. It's a scene full of life yet somehow soothing in its familiar rhythms. Here's a mainstream fact: Capernaum was a thriving fishing and trade village on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee. It served as a kind of home base for Jesus and several of his disciples. Interestingly, some scholars still debate the exact layout of the town and how much it changed during Jesus' lifetime. A quirky detail to notice: vendors often used small birds, like doves or pigeons, as living tokens to reserve spots in the market or mark their stalls, a practice less common today but quite charming. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or limited to a few regions. Jesus stops by a stall selling dried herbs, inhaling the earthy fragrance before picking up a small bundle of hyssop, used for both culinary and cleansing purposes. You note the intricate weavings of the baskets around the market, a testament to local craftsmanship. As you follow Jesus out of the market and toward the quiet of a nearby synagogue, the morning hustle fades into a peaceful hush. You remember the rustling olive leaves from last night, feeling a sense of gentle continuity in this dusty, vibrant world. The afternoon sun warms the worn stones beneath your feet as you walk alongside Jesus through narrow village lanes shaded by date palms. The scent of fresh baked unleavened bread mingles with hints of wild thyme growing by the roadside. Dust rises softly with each step, settling gently in the still air. You arrive at a humble home where a small gathering is already seated on woven mats. Jesus smiles faintly, greeting each face with a nod that carries quiet reassurance. Today's conversation drifts toward parables, simple stories with deeper meanings that Jesus shares in his calm, unhurried way. A historical fact: parables were a common teaching method in ancient Jewish culture, using everyday life scenes to illustrate moral lessons. Scholars still debate which parables originated with Jesus and which might have older roots in oral tradition. A quirky tidbit: some parables mention animals not commonly found in Galilee, like camels or lions, puzzling historians who wonder if these were symbolic or drawn from travelers' tales. There's ongoing debate about how literal these references were meant to be. As Jesus speaks, you notice the flicker of sunlight playing on the rough wooden beams above, casting soft patterns on the faces of those listening. The gentle rhythm of his voice and the warmth of the room wrap around you like a cozy blanket. Historians still argue whether Jesus' parables were originally meant as private teachings or public sermons. Either way, their soothing cadence invites your mind to wander peacefully, pondering quiet lessons from dusty roads and everyday life. You feel the day slow as the shadows lengthen, and you settle into this moment of calm storytelling, perfect for drifting gently toward sleep. As the sun dips lower, you walk with Jesus toward the tranquil shore of the Sea of Galilee. The gentle lapping of water against smooth stones creates a soft, natural rhythm that complements the warm evening air. Small fishing boats, their sails furled, rest quietly on the sand, while distant birds call softly overhead. Jesus pauses to run his fingers through the cool water, the droplets glinting like tiny jewels in the fading light. The smell of salt and fresh water mingles with wild grasses swaying in a light breeze. This peaceful moment feels timeless, almost suspended in a quiet bubble. A well-known historical fact: the Sea of Galilee was a vital resource for fishing communities and a key setting for many of Jesus' teachings and miracles. Historians still debate the precise locations where specific events took place along its shores. A quirky detail to imagine: fishermen sometimes used dried crocodile dung as a rudimentary sunscreen, a practice historians find both amusing and puzzling. It's one of those odd everyday facts that remind you how different life was back then. Jesus invites a few disciples to join him in mending fishing nets, their rough hands working slowly and patiently as the sun sets. The scene is simple but rich with quiet companionship and the steady pulse of shared labor. You reflect on how these small moments, far from the crowds and grand stories, reveal a more human side of Jesus, making it easier to feel a gentle connection as you wind down alongside him. As darkness deepens, the soft crooning of night insects begins, setting the perfect backdrop for your mind to drift peacefully toward rest. Night falls gently over the hillside as you follow Jesus up the winding path toward a quiet olive grove. The stars begin to twinkle above, their pale light casting soft shadows on the rough bark of ancient trees. The cool night air carries the faint scent of earth and crushed leaves. You settle beneath an olive tree, feeling the rough texture of its bark against your fingertips. The silence here is deep, broken only by the occasional rustle of branches and distant night birds. It's a perfect moment to pause and reflect. A historical fact: olive groves were common in the region and held symbolic significance, often representing peace and endurance. Some scholars still debate how much olive oil was used daily versus reserved for religious rituals. A quirky tidbit: ancient olive trees were sometimes so gnarled and twisted they resembled mythical creatures, sparking local legends. Historians ponder whether these tales influenced some of the parables Jesus shared. Jesus prays quietly, his voice barely a whisper, blending with the natural sounds around you. It's a gentle, unassuming act that carries a weight of quiet strength and hope. You notice the way the moonlight filters through the leaves, painting dappled patterns on the ground. Historians still argue about the exact words Jesus spoke during these moments of solitude, but the sense of calm and intention is clear. It's as if time itself slows down here, inviting you to breathe deeply and let your worries fade. This serene scene sets a tranquil tone, perfect for your mind to drift gently toward peaceful sleep. The early morning mist clings softly to the hills as you trail behind Jesus and his companions, their footsteps muffled by the dew-soaked earth. The world feels hushed, wrapped in the delicate embrace of dawn's first light filtering through olive branches. The scent of damp soil and blooming wildflowers gently fills the air. You watch as Jesus pauses to greet a few early risers, farmers tending goats and women drawing water at the well. Each interaction is quiet and unassuming, marked by brief smiles and nods. There's a comforting normalcy in these simple exchanges. A historical fact: daily routines in first-century Judea often began at dawn, with villagers engaging in tasks crucial for survival. Scholars still debate how much Jesus' lifestyle reflected that of a typical itinerant teacher versus someone more unusual. A quirky tidbit: some ancient villagers believed humming a certain tune while fetching water would keep mischievous spirits at bay, an odd superstition you imagine Jesus might have quietly observed with a knowing smile. The group moves steadily toward the town, where markets buzz with the slow awakening of daily commerce. Jesus weaves through the crowd with practiced ease, sharing quiet wisdom that often goes unnoticed by hurried passers-by. Historians still argue whether Jesus' everyday life was more shaped by rural simplicity or urban interaction, but the gentle cadence of these morning moments invites your mind to slow down and settle into rest. The peaceful rhythm of the day's beginning blends seamlessly with the soft light, creating a perfect lullaby for your drifting thoughts. The afternoon sun casts a warm, golden glow as you stroll alongside Jesus through a bustling marketplace. The scent of fresh herbs, baked bread, and spices, cumin, coriander, and a hint of myrrh, fills the air, mingling with the soft murmur of bargaining voices and footsteps on dusty stone. You watch as Jesus pauses to examine a simple clay lamp, the kind used in homes across Galilee. Its flickering light would have illuminated countless evenings much like this one, casting dancing shadows on rough-hewn walls. The everyday objects here carry stories of countless lives lived quietly. A historical fact: markets in first-century Palestine were vibrant centers of trade and social exchange, connecting distant villages with the wider world. Scholars debate how often Jesus might have visited such lively places versus spending time in solitude or small gatherings. A quirky detail: some vendors believed that sprinkling a little salt on goods brought good luck, an old custom that seems quaint yet charming in its simplicity. You imagine Jesus observing these rituals with gentle amusement. As you follow, Jesus stops briefly to share a simple teaching with a group of children gathered nearby, their eyes wide with curiosity. His words, softly spoken, seem to carry an unexpected lightness amidst the day's bustle. Historians still argue whether Jesus used marketplaces as venues for teaching or preferred quieter settings, but here, amidst the gentle chaos, you find a soothing rhythm perfect for winding down. The soft clinking of coins and murmured conversations blend into a gentle backdrop as the afternoon fades toward evening, inviting your mind to relax further. The sun dips low, casting long shadows as you join Jesus on the slow, dusty path leading up the Mount of Olives. The earth beneath your feet crunches softly, mingling with the faint rustle of olive leaves in the evening breeze. The air is cooler now, carrying whispers of stories and ancient prayers. You feel the calm settling around you, a gentle hush enveloping the landscape as the last light fades. Jesus walks steadily ahead, his silhouette outlined against the fading sky, a quiet figure in the vastness of the twilight. A historical fact: the Mount of Olives held deep spiritual significance, serving as a place of prayer and reflection for centuries. Historians still debate how much Jesus' final hours there shaped early Christian tradition. A quirky tidbit: some locals believed the olives from this mountain had healing properties, used in remedies and soothing balms. You imagine the soft scent of crushed olives mixing with the evening air as you walk. The journey slows further, each step a meditation, inviting you to let go of the day's distractions. Jesus pauses beneath a particularly ancient olive tree, its twisted branches reaching toward the heavens, and bows his head in quiet contemplation. As darkness settles fully, the stars begin to twinkle softly above, a peaceful canopy guiding you toward rest. The gentle sounds of night, crickets, a distant owl, wrap around you like a comforting lullaby. The story gently fades, leaving you with a sense of calm and quiet wonder, perfectly poised for sleep's embrace. Now, as the night deepens, allow your breath to slow and your thoughts to soften. Imagine the cool night air gently brushing your skin, carrying with it the faint, earthy scent of olive groves resting under a blanket of stars. Each breath draws in peace, each exhale lets go of tension. The soft rustling of leaves whispers through the silence, inviting your mind to drift like the gentle breeze itself, light, effortless, and free. Picture yourself resting beneath that ancient olive tree, feeling the rough bark grounding you while the vast sky above wraps you in calm. And no need to hold on to worries or rushing thoughts tonight. They melt away like morning mist warmed by the sun. Let the quiet presence of this slow, dusty journey seep into your bones, soothing every muscle and calming every restless thought. Sleep approaches softly, like a tender melody heard from afar, steady, reassuring, and sweet. Allow your eyes to close when they're ready, knowing that you've walked alongside a figure of peace and quiet strength. May your dreams be gentle, your rest deep, and your morning bright. End of script. Sweet dreams.